My name is Enjoli Moon. I'm the founder and creative director of the Africana Independent Film Festival based here in Richmond, Virginia. Africana is a festival dedicated to showcasing the cinematic works of people of color from around the world. We place a special focus on the global Black narrative. Through that work, it's opened many doors to include my work at the ICA at DCU as a film curator and curator of special programs. I'm also the co-founder of the JXN Project and Black Ass Field Trip with my sister Sesha Moon. And I've had the pleasure of working with BLK RVA to elevate and celebrate Black businesses here in the city.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sesha Joi Moon. I am a senior talent management strategist at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, where I focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy. I am also the curator of the Insta blog known as Angry Black Female. We started as a community for dismantling narratives about women of color, but has since grown into a space for conscious conversation with over 11,000 followers. I think my best title is I'm Enjoli's little sister, and in that we partnered, as she said, on Black Ass Field Trip and the JXN Project.
When I turned 20, I started to actually work in JXN Ward. I started working at the Croker Spot, the original Croker Spot at the corner of 2nd and Lee, and it was 10 years that I was there, and over that 10 years to be able to be an active part of a 100-year legacy that was just really rooted in this idea of Black excellence and what it meant to carry a torch, you know, to be under the tutelage of Never Eggleston III, the grandson of the person who started the Eggleston Hotel back in the early 1900s, and the level of just attachment, love, pride, and intention that he had around building intentional Black space that celebrated us unapologetically and just elevated our histories, from the pictures on the wall to the food on the plate to the way in which people engage with one another. And through that experience, it just rooted me in JXN Ward and an understanding of the importance of this space. We were right across from the Maggie L. Walker House, so learning more about her history and then understanding that you are really encroached in a space that is just blocks and blocks and blocks of people who built something out of nothing, essentially. And really, this is a foundation for what it means to be a Black entrepreneur and this idea of Black excellence across the country. So, you know, JXN Ward just means a ton to me, and to see the arc of it over time, while it's something to be proud of, it's also something that we need to pay attention to, because there are aspects of JXN Ward that are a cautionary tale. And so just making sure that we are using all of the resources available to us to make sure that this continues to be a space that elevates Black excellence and creates an opportunity for Black excellence. Because what we're seeing right now is a pushing out of those opportunities, and that's part of what JXN Project is about.
So when you think about slavery, probably because of the impact of media, you normally think of Black people on plantations picking cotton. And that's even for me, someone who has a degree in Black studies. That's normally the visual that pops right into my head. But when you really dig deeper to understand the complexities of enslavement in Richmond, particularly in the 1800s, it was a lot more multidimensional than that. As part of the urbanized enslaved system, which was very unique to Richmond, as well as a couple of sister cities like New Orleans, Baltimore, and Charleston, you had a dynamic where, because of the first wave of the Industrial Revolution, enslaved people were actually transitioning from plantations to plants, coming from the counties into the cities. And so when you understand that, JXN Ward becomes a very integral space. Original settlers in what will become JXN Ward were mostly freed Blacks, urbanized enslaved Blacks, and then a few Jewish and German immigrants. What's important about that is that because of the Industrial Revolution, you had Black workers working at mills across the entire city, the Tredegar Ironworks being one example. And that's actually why Richmond became one of the relocated capitals of the Confederacy, because we were the most industrialized city that was to the north, but still south of the Mason-Dixon line. And with that comes this dynamic where enslaved Black people were living in separate quarters than their enslavers. They were actually making money that was then put into their hands, that they then had to give a portion of it to their enslavers, and then in some situations they actually could make a profit. Because they were in spaces outside of their enslavers, normally in boarded houses across JXN Ward, they could even get side jobs. So that concept of like the side hustle is birthed from a place like JXN Ward. And so it's important to understand that, because a lot of times we focus on the Black excellence that emerged in Richmond around the late 1800s and the early 1900s. But you have to understand that there were already concepts in play where Black people in Richmond were creating spaces for their freedom well before the Emancipation Proclamation. If you look at the city directories, Black people before emancipation were owning restaurants. They were tailors, they were blacksmiths, they were doing it. So this concept of commerce, this concept of independence, this concept of home ownership, it was not foreign to Black Richmonders before 1865.
You know, as someone from Richmond, that was not something I knew. And I know that a lot of people don't understand that about Jackson Ward. And that's primarily because we focus on certain figures from Jackson Ward who were indeed impactful and important to our history and the history of the country. People like Maggie L. Walker, John Mitchell Jr., W.W. Brown. But the reality is, those shoulders, they're weary now because we put so much weight. We put the weight of a full legacy, a multi-generational legacy on these particular shoulders. But what we understand now is that we do have so many different figures, so much different work that we can point to speak to why Jackson Ward was so important. And so we are looking to elevate the narrative of those rested and ready shoulders, people who no one knows about just yet, and be able to educate ourselves and others about the history of this amazing space and why it's important to not only Richmond, but important to the national narrative and what it means to be Black, what it means to be an entrepreneur, and what it means to strive for excellence and hold space for your legacy.